China's annual political season kicks off in sync with spring. The first sessions of the 14th National Legislature and the National Political Consultative Body begin in the first March weekend in Beijing. The meetings, known as the two sessions, are the first after the CPC 20th National Congress last year. National lawmakers and political advisors gathered to chart the course of the country's development and welfare of its citizens for the year and possibly beyond. The Chinese leadership is poised to announce specific targets for socio-economic development for the year. So what is on top of the agenda for this year's two sessions? What economic goals can we expect to be set for the country, and what are the hot button issues that the Chinese people care most about? Welcome to a special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you from Beijing. I'm pleased to be joined from Hong Kong by Professor Wang from the City University of Hong Kong, from Singapore by Khee Giap, who's the chairman of the Singapore National Committee for Pacific Economic Cooperation, from Australia, Colin Mackerras, a Sinologist and Emeritus Professor at Griffith University, from Beijing, Zoon Ahmed, a journalist and research fellow of the think tank Center for China and Globalization, and also from Beijing, David Ferguson, the Honorary English editor of the Foreign Language Press. The warmest welcome to all of you for this special discussion. So, Colin, you have been studying China, researching China for decades. Help our audience understand exactly how the Chinese political system and political season works and why it matters.
Well, I think it matters because every year there are particular targets set, but I think more important is the overall pattern of development of China, and the two sessions, as they're called. I think they have a very special place in determining the agenda that's going to be followed. But of course, the Party Congress also does a lot about that, and in fact, it matters more. But what the two sessions do, I think, also matters considerably, and it gives us some kind of idea about what's on top of the minds of the leadership, and it gives us quite a good insight, I think, too, into what's on the minds of the Chinese people, and I think that matters a lot.
Well, the Chinese system is definitely different from that in many other countries, especially in developed Western countries. I'm going to go to Professor Wang in Hong Kong. Help us understand, because the two sessions literally meaning the session of the National People's Congress, which is the national legislature, and the session of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, which is abbreviated to be CPPCC, which is something not so easy to say for many people, but if you know the two sessions, that's fine enough. What is the major difference between the two sessions as symbol of Chinese political system vis-a-vis those in the West? Professor Wang.
Thanks for having me. China has a rather unique political system. It is called the People's Congress system. So you have the National People's Congress, which according to the Chinese constitution is the top, the highest political organ in the Chinese political system. And you also have the top political body, which is called, as you mentioned, the political consultative body, comprising a group of advisors, political advisors, to provide advice to the Chinese leadership. So this is Chinese design of democracy, and based on the party leadership and united front. So it's different from of course from the American system, and the Western system in general is based on separation of powers. So the so-called two sessions, which are basically the annual event of the legislatures and the political advisors. So they have two things to do. The first thing is to turn party policy into state policy, right? So many of the proposals would be codified into laws, and some of the policies will become state policies to be implemented at all levels. And also, it is an annual opportunity for the people who are appointed as political advisors to provide feedback from all corners of the Chinese social life.
So, David, you have been in China for many years. How does this system, the system that Professor Wang just eloquently explained, how does that reflect the will, the concern, the aspirations of the people through, the deputies to the National Congress and the members of the National Advisory Body? We understand that the deputies are elected and the advisors are appointed. So how do these two organs gather the information, the wish, the needs of the people and translate that into national policies or an input into the national policy making? Let's put it this way.
The most important aspect of this system is continuity. I'm picking up on the difference between the way the Western system works and the China system. The West makes a big deal of its elections and its party competition. The Chinese system is much better for long-term planning and implementation of plans. What you don't have in China is constant switches and reverses of policy. What these bodies are able to do is maintain a degree of continuity through changes in generation and changes in personnel. People, individual, right down to the actual individuals themselves, are allowed to take part in the process of developing legislation. There is a formal process for the legislature by which the legislature operates, which allows groups like CPPCC, but it actually allows individual members of the public to make comments and specific proposals and suggestions on pieces of legislation that are being considered, so that before any legislation turns into an act, any person in China has the opportunity to contribute to the discussion and to make suggestions, and the actual legislative process is formally structured in a way that it's obliged these contributions into account.
Yes, as a matter of fact, every year the deputies that are participating in these two sessions will bring proposals with them, which they have formulated over the past year, and on the basis of collecting opinion from people in that particular constituency, and it is obligated that these proposals are followed up as to whether they will be turned into law, what is being done about it, or if not, why that is the case. Let's turn the attention to the most pressing issues for this year's two session. And Khee Giap, let me go to you. One of the things, of course, is the announcement of the formation of the new administration team after the 20th Party Congress last year. How significant is that a step for the Chinese political system, and what do you expect to be the central messages that will be sent from this new government team?
Yeah, looking at the present team, and we do expect that decision will be made faster because they are of the same camp, and I think we expect a smooth decision with less debate, and China need to recover very quickly from the COVID, and you can see the zero COVID policy, you can see the reactions very fast, and therefore we look forward to the new government in terms of the opening up. The new government committed to opening up even wider. And we look forward to the investment approval processes, which I think will be even faster. So the advantage of this administration, as we see it, is that views reflected up. China is so big, they can be local, regional, or countrywide. But once they make a decision, they will make it very transparent and make it very open, and it's easier for us, an outsider, as a foreign direct investors. We can see whether the urbanization, the housing issue has it been resolved, and I think this government will be able to do this kind of policy switches very efficiently and can address the issue with less time wasted on debate.
Zoon, you have also been studying the Chinese political system and the Chinese way of life in particular. What is your understanding of the linkage between, and going back to the political system, between the National Congress of the Communist Party of China last year, which is the 20th, to this year's top legislature and top political advisory meetings? How do you see the connection between these two, and why such an arrangement can propel China's growth as it did over the past 70 years, especially over the past 45 years?
Thank you so much, Lucian, for having me on the program. I think Professor Wang also touched upon this. I mean, the link between the Congress and the two sessions. What I can say, I mean, of course, all of our other guests have also mentioned different aspects. What is the significance? How are people's perspectives, frontliners' perspectives brought into, in the form of suggestions and then formulated into policy? So for me, I think if I look at it from an outsider's perspective, people who are not very familiar with the system, is that the party Congress gives a long-term perspective, a vision for the next coming years. And the two sessions is really about enactment of specific policies. It's also about reflection. So whereas, David was very rightly pointed out that there is a system which regards continuity as a top priority. China's development, as you also said, 70 years, and especially the reform and opening up, all of this period has been about predictability, understanding a long-term perspective, and then constantly reflecting on what further needs to be done. So the two sessions, especially this year, the top priority is COVID recovery. All economies in the world have been affected during these 3 years. If you actually look at some statistics, how China's policies have protected ordinary people as well. You can look at, for example, inflation in China is the lowest in the G20 countries and the 6th lowest in the world. Other factors as well, the level of safety that people have enjoyed over these years has been unprecedented. It's been probably in many ways, a policy that has taught people. That has been an example for many other countries. That said, now moving forward, the two sessions are going to allow specific policies that are going to address these factors: economic recovery, and as you mentioned, taking the frontliners, ordinary people's, individuals' priorities. What is bothering them? And here you have for the CPPCC, which also David and other speakers pointed out, it is people in specific industries. You can say think tankers, doctors, people who are driving, bus drivers. This is the kind of input, the real ground input that is coming into motion and that is being considered. Secondly, even now with the internet, Chinese social media is very vibrant. People are expressing what are the concerns they have. And there's also a specific system to get their feedback on what should be the priority policies to help people also improve the quality of their lives and understand what are the younger people, what are the emerging generation, and also the middle class, which is so important, what are their key concerns. Yeah. So in the end, two sessions every year are about reflection, about enactment of new policies, and about understanding what is working and what can be improved.
Yeah. Colin, I still want to continue a little bit on the political arrangement here, because this is very important for people to really understand how the Chinese system works. We call it a whole process, people's democracy. But the individuals don't really go and cast a vote, but they do select their People's Congress deputies, and based on that, they will select the higher level of People's Congress deputies, and until they go to the National Congress level. And yet, ordinary people's wills and their opinions are able to be reflected in the top policy making. How does that work here exactly, according to your understanding, and how is that a form of democracy that has propelled really China's economic and social development over the past decades?
Well, my understanding is that individuals have ways of communicating their views and what matters to them, and not only individuals, but groups of people have ways of communicating their concerns to groups that have been elected, and that way they can get their views heard by the Lianghui, the two sessions. But I think what's also very important to say, and that is that the party leads this process, and it has a long-term vision, and it also can listen to views of ordinary people, and I think that happens, and I think that happens more than it used to, and that seems to me to be a democratic process and a very good thing. I think that that sort of process, I mean, it's not completely new by any means, but I think it has been gathering momentum over the last few years. That's my understanding, anyway, of what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I've worked and I haven't been to China since 2019, but I have taught many times in China now,
Mm-hmm.
and I see the way things are reflected in my students, and the way their thinking changes, and the way their inputs into processes of administration and management go through the you know, from the bottom up to the top.
Yeah.
And I think that works pretty well.
Yeah, well, definitely the system is Chinese, and it has worked well. So China is vowing to perfect that, to make that even better. Meanwhile, still setting out specific goals, as I said, for the year and for the next years to come. Professor Wang, now one topic many people pay attention to, of course, is China's economic recovery. Last year, we set the target at around 5.5%, but because of the disruptions caused by COVID-19, we only reached 3%. What do you think is going to be the picture this year? What kind of number will be set out that is reasonable and necessary for China to maintain its development and to keep its people, especially young people, employed? Professor Wang.
Oh, thank you. First, if I may add something to your original question about the nature of the Chinese political system.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there of course twists and turns in implementing it. At least the original design was based on a few principles. It is called the People's Democratic Centralism. So before a decision is made, so the party members and those persons in charge will go around and collect opinions, collect feedbacks from all corners of the Chinese society, and also at all levels. But once the decision is made, so the government officials and especially party members have to implement without reservation. And the deputies are actually elected at separate levels. So eventually they are supposed to transmit the opinion of the people from the grassroots to the top level. And also there's also another very important, at least according to the original design of the system, another very important political principle in the system that is called the mice line. So the officials have to keep very close touch with people at the grassroots level. Mm-hmm. So that is the requirement. So this is how the system was designed to incorporate the opinion of the Chinese people. So this is very much the gist of the Chinese political system and also the people's democracy. As for your second question about the economy, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I'm not an economist. I'm a scholar of international economic law. But I have to say, I went back to the mainland a few weeks ago. The trip made me very confident about. I'm actually quite upbeat because I see everything is coming back. I mean, everything is coming back. So the people are going out to do shopping and to eat, and so life have coming back to normality. So and which makes me actually quite optimistic about the rebound of the Chinese economy. Yeah. But I would yield the time to those who have economic background here.
Yeah, well, definitely. Let me go to Khee Giap there, because China's economic recovery prospects is definitely what people are watching. It seems that foreign investors are showing a stepped up interest or confidence in the Chinese economy. For instance, in January, foreign direct investment into the Chinese mainland grew by 15% year on year to reach 130 billion US dollars. That's according to China's Ministry of Commerce. So do you think that reflects the sentiment of foreign investors in general, or are they still taking a wait-and-see approach?
Yeah, as an economist myself, we watch the development of China, especially the GDP, grow very closely. In fact, I just came back from Suzhou Industrial Park. I must say that this 5.5% is quite realistic. In fact, my projection will be China's GDP growth for 2020 will certainly be at least 5%, if not higher. But for two reasons. One is the low base of 3% last year. So you tend to the low base effect. And secondly is from the zero COVID policy, even when to industrial park, we know that foreign direct investment, the kind of effort has been rather slow. And everybody is looking for this opening up. And now we see a quick opening up, and all those penned up decision that's supposed to go through, and it's taking place very fast now. And we also get signals that local governments, they are supposed to be prepared fast enough to allow this foreign direct investment to see them and to get the whole investment process moving. So therefore, we are very optimistic that this growth will be at least 5%, and especially that if China is going to resolve the housing issues and the development in the domestic economy in terms of domestic demand will pick up. And many of the foreign direct investment now in China, it can be even for companies from Singapore in F&B, in urbanization, shopping mall, and these are areas that Singapore can participate. And we look forward to the kind of very favorable environment that China keep assuring everybody that they're not going backward, and then the opening up will be even wider. So therefore, the signal is very clear, and we are all excited.
Are there any potential uncertainties that make people pause and think a little bit, or, you know, which give people a sense of uncertainty? Are there anything that's yes. Bothering you, for instance, as an investor?
In certain area, for example, the one on the chips policy restriction by the United States, it does to some extent affect the semiconductor industry. So this is what we are watching. And also the tariff resulted in some of the multinational decided to move part of the production process to Vietnam or to Thailand. For example, Sony camera or some of the TV screen manufacturers.
Are you concerned that the labor cost is getting a bit too high on the Chinese mainland? So maybe it makes more sense to relocate to other, middle income or low income countries.
Higher labor cost is an old issue. Then now you see the MNC, they're moving into central China, western China, where the wages are relatively lower. Okay. Now, in the past, the wages was high because everybody was concentrating on the coastal cities because of the logistic. But now China have the speed train and have the highway. So I think slowly, China is a big country, that the cost situation will ease as they move into other part of China, which are no longer limited by logistic constraint, which was in the past. Okay. Therefore, I think wage cost is not so much the immediate concern, but rather the logistic that able to move in and out of deeper China and certain industries, semiconductor, yes, there might be a constraint, but China have many other industries, especially those who are related to domestic demand. And China is a big economy with a rising middle class. Okay. We are very optimistic that foreign investment into China in those areas which are linked to their domestic demand will be very much welcome.
Yeah. I'm going to ask two more questions. That's all the time I have, one to Zoon and one to David. Zoon, do you see any major shift in China's foreign policy?
Throughout the COVID years, me following especially, China and the developing countries dynamic, how China has been constantly engaging, there has been a policy of constant engagement and providing moral leadership also to developing countries. I think what will shift is hopefully the frequency of high-level interaction and engagement. And this is something which will be a positive development. But overall, China, also the global security initiative has been better explained to the world. This is going to help, especially the global South, understand China's policy moving forward. And that said, another important thing to recognize is that even during COVID years, some critical developments among the Belt and Road countries, the Belt and Road Initiative, have taken place. Those will pick up pace. Already more delegations from worldwide are coming to China to understand China's development and to be able to practice those principles, learn from China's example when they go back home. Another example I'll give, maybe the last one for now, is that the special economic zone development has been very critical for developing countries. And that's where, more face-to-face frequent interactions between the business sectors of China and other countries can play a very important role in expediting that.
Finally, David, what else will you be looking for during this year's 2 sessions, which will have far-reaching impact on countries in other parts of the world, especially probably in the global south?
Well, the biggest issue that we face right now are the external issues. President Xi talks about the global community of shared future, and it's vital to all of us. We only have one globe, and we only have one future. And if half of the planet is determined to have a future of confrontation and conflict, the other half of the planet cannot enjoy a future of peace and prosperity. Within that context, China and the US are by far now the biggest and strongest players in the game. And therefore, the relationship between China and the US is absolutely vital to the global community. And the picture there is not very positive at all. The US seems at the moment to be hell-bent on creating confrontation and conflict, and the war rhetoric is ramping up. So the single biggest problem that China has to face is not in managing the micro problems in the domestic arena. It's finding a way to break through and recreate some kind of positive relationship with the United States. And that is going to be a very hard task. I don't know.
David, in one sentence, what does China need the most at this moment if it tries to stabilize its economy, if it tries to build its society, keep people employed? What do you think China needs the most in terms of external environment?
It has to be continuity.
Colin, do you have one word here, Colin?
Stability, peace, and non-confrontation.
We have to leave it there, but the key words will stay in our mind: peace, stability, and non-confrontation. Thank you so much, Colin Mackerras, Khee Giap, Wang Jiangyu, Zoon Ahmed, and David Ferguson for this wonderful discussion on the 2 sessions China's annual political season.